A large language model in itself is designed to hallucinate. It's not a bug. It's actually a feature. I think some companies should fail. Like, they're just not very good. But they just hang on there like, a limpet up a whale's ass. They're just hanging on. Like, why do you exist?
6 years at the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence. A company built from absolutely nothing into a frontier AI powerhouse. This is the founder and chief AI officer of Takara, Jordan Legg.
I want as minimal bureaucracy as possible as a human being because it's annoying. But with an AI, you want almost as much bureaucracy as physically possible to make sure that what it produces is actually good.
How can you run a serious business using a platform, a tool that you can't actually fully trust? Are you not just contributing to this same brain shrinking problem?
Possibly. I'm not going to deny that it definitely lowers your neural load. They say things like, AI is just going to do everything for you just to sit back. Oh, amazing. It's absolute horse. Okay, here's what I know about people. If you put them all in a room and tell them to do nothing, absolutely nothing, what do?
Something.
They do something. They can't help themselves but do something. Yes, it's contributing to the cognitive decline, but also, I have no choice.
Welcome to the Objection Room, not the business engine. That name is dead. The podcast has rebranded. And instead of two people just having a chat, talking about their business, I'm going to bring objections to them and we'll talk about those instead. I hope you love this episode. I hope you love the format. And today I'm talking to Jordan Legg. I loved this episode and we're talking all things AI. I won't get into specifics. If you loved it, show some love. Thank you very much. Every single one of these AI models is built on other people's work, other people's art, their videos, their photos, their creativity, their writing. And you're building a model and therefore also ingesting data and using other people's creativity. Have you asked all of these people for their consent?
Absolutely not. No. There's no vehicle for me to ask their consent anyways. So what happens really is that the web is this public place, right? Where like you go on your computer and you go to a website and then you read it. And I think what people think is that when an AI trains on that content, I think people think that it like sort of saves it somehow, like in the model. And that's not necessarily true. It turns it into like a mathematical representation of that data, if that's easy to understand. Like, I
see what you mean, yeah.
It turns it into something completely different. It's not stored. The problem comes, and I see where the problem is. Now, we build embedding models, and so what they do is they turn text into mathematical vectors. And the reason you'd want to do that is because those mathematical vectors can be compared, and that's how Google works. So they turn your search query into a vector. It then compares it to all the vectors of every web page that's ever been made, and then returns the most relevant vector, web page, to you. And large language models do the same thing, except they add a bit on the end, which is they then compare every possible vector that they can think of against what they call a tokenizer or a vocab of all the words that they can think of, and then starts to output one after the other. And if you do that on a big enough scale, you get something like ChatGPT that sure enough can like start to talk and feel and do all manners of things. And so one of the problems with this industry is we've taken an experimental technology like ChatGPT, which it was totally a total massive experiment. Go back to GPT-2 before it was live, right? The original GPT-2 paper, it was like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. It could do language modeling. Before it was called large language modeling, it was just language modeling. It can model languages. Oh, cool.
What does that mean?
It means if you model, let's say in F1, they would do fluid dynamic modeling. They would model the way the air goes over the car, maybe in a wind tunnel or in simulations to see how that car would perform. In the same way, you can do language modeling where you study a huge subset of text and you model how that AI model can actually interact with that and store that and recreate it. And that was a whole area of research, not profit, but research. And then they scaled it up hugely. And then they started selling it. And of course, there's no legal frameworks for any of this because no one had ever done this before. The question you should be asking yourself is, now that it's already been done, what do you do about it? Mm-hmm. The data is already out there. It's already on a nice website called Hugging Face, a shout out to Hugging Face. It's a big repository of data and models and all sorts of other things. And, Wikipedia just put their entire catalog on there to stop people scraping the website because there were so many people going on the website, it was like crashing their website. And the question you're going to ask yourself is, not should we ask permission or not ask permission? It's how do you put the genie back in the bottle now that it's already been done? And how do we, in the future, make sure that when people make content, they are remunerated for language models or other types of models for bringing them to their content, right? Just like when people put their things on Google, right? Indexing, of course, Googlebot, you might have seen on your webmaster or whatever, you see it's indexed your site. And the reason you'd want to do that is so that people can reach your site and then give you money, right? And I think that's the chain that's broken. It's not that it's trained on your content, it's that it's trained on your content and then you see no benefit to that. And so you say, what the hell? Mm-hmm. And of course, the AI companies have an invested interest to give you something back because they constantly need more content to keep training. And they've already trained on basically the entire internet. So they need to make sure they have fresh content. And that's why they sign deals with the Times and that. I think that's the main question is how do you create a framework that's repeatable, that's worldwide, and could be used to make sure people get directed to the place they need to go to, rather than just hoovering up loads of content and then no one gets any benefit to any of it. I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a hard question and not really one that needs an answer. It's more of a thought. And I think that the copyright is hard. And I know that the big, like Disney and Marvel and things like that have really gone against some of the AI chatbots like ChatGPT and things like that because they very clearly use their data and use their copyright. And that's where it gets a bit funny. And you're right. It's not so much about like setting it up. It's like now that it's already out there, how do you put it back in?
For sure.
It's hard. Yeah,
it's really hard because it's not like you could bust down the door with the FBI of OpenAI in San Francisco, rip open the ChatGPT model. There's Winnie the Pooh. There he is in there.
Pull him out.
You'd go in there and you'd go, oh my goodness, there's a 15,000 dimensional embedding matrix. That's all you'd see.
What do you think the outcome should be then? This is a very high level question that doesn't really need an answer, but these people who are getting their content essentially ripped off by AI, and when I'm creating music from, if you create music from AI, there's some weird copyright where they're kind of like, oh, you ain't a copyright to this, but you kind of do and you don't. It's like AI is. Where do you see that?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Nor do I.
I don't think that's an answerable problem because the only people that can genuinely sort of defend themselves are very large brands like Disney. Where if someone used Sora to make a new Marvel film, Iron Man 61, they're going to go after that person. But if you're a small creator and someone somehow completely recreates your idea using AI.
Uses your identity,
whatever, you have very little recourse. So, and of course, who is at fault? Is the fault, this is where it gets really complex as well, is the fault of OpenAI that has the tool, or is it the fault of the person doing the prompt to make that content?
What would you say? I'm like 60-40 or like 70-30 more towards the user.
Yeah. I'm definitely with the user, and the reason being is like...
Sorry, when you say with, do you mean you support the user or you think that...
No, I think the user's at fault, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, the machine is not going to create anything unless you do something to make it create it.
Yes.
The table is right there stationary unless I kick it over.
So it's you're the one that's actually putting the input.
Yeah, for sure. If I crash my car into my neighbor, I can't get out of the car and go, Suzuki, what are you doing?
Yes, that's a great example.
Right? So, I think the AI companies in some way need some sort of indemnity. I don't want to see them go away because the productivity gains from some of them is unbelievable, But at the same time, it can't just be a free-for-all where, you can just say, Google's trained their model on every iStock photo that's ever existed. And now I got iStock for free.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I love it. AI uses billions of gallons of water every year, and in most cases can use more electricity than some countries. And a majority of it is just kind of this like low-level maintenance, like, can you help me rewrite this marketing email so it sounds more polite? Or can you tell my boss that I'm quitting because I don't want to write it myself? Is it really worth all of that energy? Is it really worth all of that investment for something that's, has all of these problems with marginal gains?
I mean, for the examples that you raised, probably not. No. Is it worth all that effort just to, make email slightly less boring? But in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be transformational to so many industries. And, the water thing's funny because billions of water, sounds like a big number. It's actually not. Those of you at home, like, just Google, like, America's annual, just the corn farming alone, and just look at the number. I won't say the number, just look at the number, and then half of that corn is turned into ethanol to burn in cars. I'll leave it at that for the water. But the power is a big one.
I want to remind you that this podcast was produced by Maskew Media. We film, we edit, we strategize. And if you need help with your marketing, with your social media, with your video production, let me know and I can help you out. Visit www.maskew.media. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the episode.
And the power is the big one. And the only way you get around the power is by making better chips that are more efficient. And then you can get more AI essentially in the same square footage and more AI per watt essentially. So we need better chips. What's funny about AI is it's still running on chips that are mostly from, 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. There just aren't enough chips around. You hear about the chip war and the chip shortage. It's huge. It's a huge shortage. But when we have the newer chips, they will be more efficient and hopefully we can get more AI. Of course, more people will use it and it can entirely eat that again anyways. And so I think we need to be more smart about how we generate that electricity. I think it's why the UK is so uncompetitive in this arena, because our energy costs are obviously exceedingly high. And so building a data center here to do AI is just really, really expensive. But if you also look at a data center and its business model, you'll start to understand why they actually don't want to use that much water and they actually don't want to use that much electricity, because that costs them money. So they have an invested interest in making that number as low as physically possible because it costs them money. So it's attached to their business model to do that. And I think as long as we're using AI for really good use cases and constantly making AI better and more efficient over time, I think it will be a really great thing and worth the energy and worth the water as well. Even just in the last year, like something like ChatGPT, I mean, it used to cost like a bottle of water or something. There was this thing where it cost a bottle of water per prompt, whatever. That was the headline figure like a year or a year and a half ago. Now it's like less than a teaspoon, because of the, massive optimizations that teams have done to models, things that we've learned that we just didn't know, all those many months ago. And that's just a small example of some of the long strides, as well as data centers are some of the most power efficient places in the world. I have many arguments with people that want to do like local AI. It'd be much more efficient to do AI locally. like your little laptop and your 60-watt laptop charger is more efficient than a giant data center with like, 3-phase power, water cooling, and a giant rack that can amortize thousands of users on a single machine compared to your one user, which is you, on your machine. So I think it's, if we make it bigger, weirdly, it'll be more efficient, economies of scale.
Yep.
If we make sure we're not subsidizing the data centers, which I think is a bad decision from a lot of countries.
Not is a bad. So you think they should be subsidized or not? Sorry.
No, they're already subsidizing them.
Okay.
So they shouldn't be doing that.
Why are they?
Because if someone comes to you and says, hey, Ireland, I want to build a data center here and I'll spend $6 billion on it. But, I want you to come my way a little bit and help me make this investment in Ireland.
I see.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
So why do you not think that should happen then, if it makes sense from a business perspective?
Well, because the costs of the grid are born of everyone else that pays for it. And the electricity cost is part of their business model. So I would rather say pay for the electricity. If you're going to give them some sort of incentive, give them a tax break, because at least you can amortize that over years. But the electricity system, I actually heard from AWS West like last year, they're tapped out in Ireland. They can't even build one more data center, even if they wanted to. The electricity is literally maxed out. They can't do more. So subsidizing, parts of a business model, make that business model fake. It's not real, okay? If part of your business model you're getting for free, and it's only because like you've got some friends in politics, that's not necessarily like a real business model, right? That's more like a fake one, I don't get free gas at the petrol station because one of my friends works at BP, and I need it for my trucking business. That sounds like corruption. That's what that sounds like. So I'd love for there to be, no subsidies would be great, because then you lose that argument. At least they're paying for the electricity, but it's more offensive, when someone builds a data center and you're like, okay, so it's going to deliver some value for the world because we're making technology. But then if you find out they're not even paying for the electricity, you're like, well, what are we getting out of it? Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
I want to just really quickly before the next objection, go back to your reply to the initial objection regarding water.
Yeah.
I feel like you answered with a little bit of a fallacy. I don't know the actual specific one, but I said essentially it uses lots of water.
Yeah.
And you said, well, this other thing also uses water.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I feel like those two things don't necessarily correlate, if you see what I mean.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the fact is it will always use water. It's just compared to what is the question I'm trying to put in people's heads. Yes, it uses water relative to these other very mundane things that also use an extreme amount of water. And it's not like, like Thames water where they're like dumping sewage in the river. They take the water and they evaporate it in the data center. They don't put chemicals in it and then put the chemicals back in the river or something like that. That's not how it works. So it's a lot less dark and as dystopian as I think people feel like it is. I'd hate it for that to be the thing that like really brings down technology is the water that we're using. There are many things that we could do. I mean, hell, if you want to stop water usage.
Veganism
is a big one. Veganism is a big one. Also, like, what if we just fix the leaky pipes in the UK? Wouldn't that be a good investment? So, there's lots of ways you can look at something and make it into a bad thing, Water is a really, really tentative one at the moment. Everyone's thinking about water. And of course, billions of gallons sounds like a huge number. But once you look at it compared to something else, you realize that number is actually not that big. Whereas the electricity bill, now that's a huge number. And that really is at the like sort of country scale. Whereas the water usage is nowhere near that. Nowhere near.
What a great answer. I just love it. I'm loving this. I'm loving this so much. So fucking cool. I want to go back to your product and your business.
Yeah, sure.
You're making AI coding 41% cheaper.
Sure.
Are you not just contributing to people not knowing what they're doing, not knowing what code they're writing, publishing stuff, and you're enabling it to be cheaper and easier so people to flood the market with tools or programs that they don't fully understand, with security flaws and things like that. Aren't you just contributing to this slop that people are putting out and don't really understand?
Yeah, sure. In the same way that we help also the people that are doing very great work with AI coding, we'll make it cheaper for the people that are doing the best work and cheaper for people that don't understand how to code, and push that code out. We'll do it for both. Unfortunately, we can't really control the quality of the code after it comes out. Those are with our partners like Anthropic and OpenAI and stuff like that. But for sure, we'll make it cheaper so people can get more out of those plans that they've paid for. They're paid for with their hard-earned money, and more out of those API credits that they're buying up, so that if they want to create something that they've never seen before, or if they want to create massive amounts of slop, or they want to really tackle something that's really quite difficult. Some of the code that I've seen AI write has been fantastic. AI gets a bad rap for writing code. If you're not already a senior software engineer, it's very difficult to code with an LLM at a very high level, because you don't have that historical knowledge of all the rules and the ways and just how things plug together. The people that are making the best code in the world are 100% senior software engineers at the top of their field in let's say they're 32, 33, they've been in the field for 10 years, and they've got Claude code at their side. And, it'll be like they're looking like Gandalf, and Claude code's their wand that they're just waving around, just writing the best code of their life. And conversely, you have a bunch of people that have never written code in their entire life, but writing as well. But I often hear from people that they're learning so much about coding that they never would have ever been able to do.
Yeah, I'm exactly in that boat. Yeah.
There you go. And so, there is a downstream problem. Open source maintainers are getting their ass kicked because they're being, given so much shit code. But at the same time, you also have things being made by people that never could have made these things. And so, is it sort of like a necessary evil that we put up with some slop code at the beginning of this wave for the, downstream effect of more people understand more about technology, let's say, and the people at the very height of their field get 40% more for their money to make some of the best code that they've ever written? I think I'm okay with it. I don't mind it. I feel bad for people that are going to get, loads of slop code thrown at them on GitHub, but I mean, dude, it's like you can't uninvent the iPhone. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I would like to talk about the 41%, but I also want to just make a brief comment that I don't think, from my naive perspective, because I'm not a coder, that AI code is bad. I think it's amazing. I think the vibe coders are the ones that have a bad reputation. I don't think it's that way around. But maybe that's my perception is... I feel like it's very capable, so capable that I don't fully understand it. So then that's where the security flaws and vulnerabilities come in, because I'm asking it to push things.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's doing, basically. But I wanted to really quickly touch on the 41%.
Yeah.
How does that actually work?
Oh, great question. Well, tools like Claude Code or many of the coding tools use a small command on your computer called grep.
Okay.
And that's a full text search query. So when the model, every time you make a question, it starts from scratch. Okay, the model doesn't know anything, so it has to start from scratch. And what it does is you ask it, let's say, I want to change the footer color to green. It has to go find the footer, so it makes a query, footer. It then returns a bunch of files on your computer or wherever it's doing the code. It then has to read all of that. And when it reads all of those files, you're paying for every single token of those files that it's reading. And the reason it does this is because Anthropic said that it couldn't use something called semantic search because it would be too slow to keep up with the rate of change of those files that the AI agent was making, because AI codes faster than any human could code. I can't certainly code faster than AI could code. And so the changes are very, very fast. And so it's very easy to use this thing called grep. Now, what we've done is we've been able to create a semantic search version that installs in Claude Code or any other coding IDE that you wish. And instead of the AI agent having to read every file to get at the footer, it can ask a question like, where's the footer code? And it returns just that snippet that it needs. And so instead of paying for all the tokens that it has to read, you only pay for the tokens from what our tool retrieves back. And so you save 41%.
I see. That makes sense. Feels like a middle manager in some sense.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's the kind of only middle management you might need.
Yeah, you actually
want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I want to talk about cognitive debt and specifically your TLDR tool.
Sure.
And generally, the people who are using heavy amounts of AI to, summarize their thinking, summarize their thoughts, read this page, read this, summarize this, they're basically not using their brain. Lower brain activity, basically like zombies. And your tool, the TLDR, is what's it called again? TLDR?
Yeah, it's tldr.takara.ai. That's our page.
And that summarizes
research papers.
Are you not just contributing to this same brain shrinking problem?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that it definitely lowers your neural load for sure. And that is honestly by design. We've designed it like that on purpose. And make no mistake, this was like a little hobby project that I made like over a year ago because there's a website called Archive. And Archive is where everyone dumps their computer science papers. And every day there's about 5,000 to 6,000 of them. Every day. So ask yourself this, you're a researcher in AI like myself. Mm-hmm. How do you keep up with 6,000 research papers? And you might have read a paper before. They're not exactly like, a novel.
No.
This is not J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter where you're just like, oh, this is kind of cool, Philosopher's Stone. No, this is like, mathematical equations. This is peer review, all this sort of stuff. And there's 6,000 of them every day. And so the question is, how do you keep up? And better yet, which papers should you care about? And so TLDR is about summarizing and trying to pull together 6,000 papers every day, crunch them down into the 50 that might be interesting, and then crunching that down even more and summarizing those really important ones. And then if you like one of the papers in that summary, you can click through and read it. And if you do a pro plan, you can get it to summarize the whole thing and everything like that. But, totally for free, you can read it with your own eyes. And understand it fully. But, I don't think we really have a choice. It would take me more human day. I mean, you wouldn't keep up. There's no way I could read 6,000 papers a day. I couldn't even review 6,000 titles a day to see which ones are important for me to read. It's one of those things where you kind of feel like you can only really pick it up at one time. And so you're not left with really any choice. And there's many problems I think there are with Archive, with just the amount of papers being dumped on there, and the quality of those papers is kind of so-so, and it seems more like marketing these days for a lot of firms. But I don't see any way around it, and I'd rather have a tool that helps people at least do something about it and stay with their finger on the pulse, like I did. Again, I intended it for myself, and then like 5,000 people a day joined with me to use this thing every day. So yeah, that's about it. I think my answer is yes, it's contributing to the cognitive decline, but also I have no choice.
I love it. What a cool fucking answer. You taught yourself at 19 years old, and you started as a junior developer. And now you are helping to build software that essentially replaces those people. You're kind of replacing yourself. If you were to go back in time, that's where you started. Now you're developing software so those people in the same situation as you can't get the same start you did. How do you feel about that?
It's very interesting. I mean, I would say it's easier now to start the way I did than back then. And the reason is because, I first started to learn to code when I was 14, right? My mates were playing Minecraft. If you played Minecraft before.
Oh, yeah. We still,
amazing game.
No shame, I still have a Minecraft season every year.
Right, all right. So you understand, okay? My parents have this horrible internet connection, and we're all trying to play together, and I have the Minecraft server. And so I'm learning to code how to make my Minecraft server just that little bit more efficient, to squeeze every last bit of juice out of my parents' terrible upload speed.
Yeah.
Right? I at 14 have to learn Java, which is a horrifying language of which I will never touch again. And I got to use something like Stack Overflow, in which a bunch of people that are senior engineers, like 20 years older than me, are talking about a bunch of terms I've never seen before. If I had Claude Code or ChatGPT back then, done. I would have fixed it, no problem. I would have saved years of my life, okay? The biggest problem with junior engineers today is not the ones that teach themselves. It's the ones that go through university and go through other degree programs where they tell the person, if you do this, you will get X job. If you do this, you'll go work at Google and be like, the greats, Mark Zuckerberg. You're going to do the startup, drop out of Stanford. The junior developer is being redefined as a role, I think, ultimately. You've got the seniors, they're in a job for life. They're amazing. They're going to do amazing things with coding. I've got a good friend of mine. I'm going to shout him out, Mikas. So when he watches this, he'll laugh. I met him when he was 16, right? And possibly one of the best developers I've ever met. Hands down, the guy is unbelievable. And he's unbelievable at that age. And now, when he goes into the workforce, when he turns 18 this year, he's going to be unbelievable. And that is sort of relative to AI, right? If you are unbelievable at that age, at that young age, you're going to be unbelievable later on with AI. And if you're not super into being a developer, if you're treating it like, a way to make money or whatever and just doing it by the numbers, you're not going to be as successful as those people that really treat it like something they really genuinely enjoy, and they want to build things that they've never seen before or done before, and they want to test themselves, as I tested myself way back. These tools make it super easy to do anything. Yeah, for sure. Like, some companies will use it to just like get rid of huge amounts of juniors, but you know what they do? They got rid of all the junior developers and then suddenly did a massive call out for AI engineers, right? So like SAP, for example, fired like a bunch of developers. I think this is like a year ago. And then did a call for hiring 8,000 AI engineers. I don't even know more than 500 AI engineers, let alone 8,000 in Europe. So there's this huge, deflationary area in one sense to like junior full stack engineers, let's say. But there's going to be a huge influx or need or inflationary pressure of people that need to build these AI systems in the future. Do prompt engineering. Prompt engineering was never a job 3 years ago. ChatGPT didn't exist like 3 years ago. So there's all these new things that people are going to do, and they're not going to be determined by people in boardrooms, people like me, okay? They're going to be done by people like Mikas that are in their room messing around with Claude Code and Codex, trying to make some, random thing, and then they suddenly learn something amazing because they're thinking about stuff that I'm not thinking about because I'm doing my day-to-day. They're at home after school, like working on some random stuff. That's time will tell if I'm right or not, but I think this sort of thing is sort of temporary in some respects, and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Your product hallucinates and it makes things up, and it does it with a straight face.
Mm-hmm.
How can you run a serious business if you're using a platform, a tool that you can't actually fully trust?
Oh, for sure. I think it would have been much harder to do this kind of business before ChatGPT, because you don't have the user expectations of how something is supposed to work. And a large language model in itself is designed to hallucinate. It's not a bug. It's actually a feature. Its entire purpose is to guess. Just like any AI model, it's a statistics machine. Mm-hmm. It statistically thinks that your marketing email should be like this one word at a time, let's say.
So sorry, just to jump in, if it's guessing, why is it that different models are better than guessing? Why is it that the new Claude Fable is better at guessing than ChatGPT 4.0 or something? It's 4.0, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, they're better because they've just been trained and evaluated much better than the previous ones. They're all predictive models. Mm-hmm. And if you think of a prediction, you've got an idea of what you're trying to hit. Let's say I predict if I throw that ball into the corner of the studio here, I think I could get in that corner based on my learned experience of throwing stuff around sometimes. But if I took someone that never thrown a ball before and told them hit that corner, that prediction would be way, way lower, way worse. And so it's very, very similar to how we learn as humans. And these machines predict just like we predict on every time. And the trust comes in to benchmarks, like what's the performance look like on benchmarks. The trust comes in with how people actually use these systems every day and the trust that they build up every day. Like, people that are 10 years younger than us, let's say, have a completely different trust paradigm to AI growing up, probably, than people that are 10, 20 years older than us. Or like my grandma that phoned me up like a few months ago talking about this new AI thing she'd heard about. She has such a distance to that. And it's all about trust, I think, in the tool. And also, hallucination can quite often be fixed with a lot of problems. The largest hallucinations or guessing or wrong answers come from the fact that the model has not seen anything to do with that sort of answer or topic in its training, right? And so what you can do is you can add more things to it. You can use a process called retrieval augmented generation, which is an incredibly boring term. But it's essentially the smart way of saying you connect the large language model to a bunch of stuff that it can search for to retrieve the right sort of answer and then explain it to you. And so you get rid of a lot of hallucinations that way, as well as just making it better over time. And, we've seen the models go from strength to strength. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they didn't exist. Today, people are going, that email didn't just look quite right that it wrote. And I think that's a huge chasm that we've crossed in such a short period of time. And if you extend that out further, you can imagine what it can do now and what it can do in 2030. It's almost limitless possibilities that you can think of. The cost models can be way lower as well, of course. And I think, it will hallucinate less on even more niche domains. I'm hearing some of my friends making models on really, really strange domains, like super specific, siloed legal models in Bulgarian. Like really specific stuff that is getting built now just to lower the hallucination rate. So yeah, that's, I think it's just going to get better, and there's nothing you can really do about it other than try to fix for it. And about trust, what do you think? Like, do you have a relative that's like at least like 5 to 10 years younger than you? And what are their opinions on AI, and like what's their experience? And what do you reckon their experience will be? Like, would they use Google ever, like in 10 years, let's say?
No, I don't think so. I don't have many people in my family that are significantly younger than me. But I think it changes. I think there's more fear, for people who are teenagers or young adults, university aged, who are moving into an industry that is changing so much. It's scary. Yeah. And I know you touched on it earlier about how the role of the developer is changing into an AI role. Yeah. And I think that feels like an obvious change. Yeah. But I think there are other people who are just terrified of the doomsday scenario.
No, for sure, yeah.
Because it's scary, because you don't know. Because it's scary because not only does the country not know, they don't know. No. They're like, I want to be a therapist. And now, even though ChatGPT and Claude aren't the best therapists at all, they are a suitable replacement for many, and therefore people think, I don't want to do that anymore because AI will take it. I think it's and I know we didn't plan for this question, but I just want to ask, I feel like as much as I use and love AI, I also hate it, and I have this doomsday vibe about it. How do you feel about that? Do you feel quite doomsday about the outcome of AI in the next 5, 10, 50 years? Or do you feel quite optimistic about where it's leading?
I feel very grey about it. I mean, you've got people like Dario Amodi and Sam Altman and, a few other guys, Solomon from DeepMind as well. These guys talk about utopia, right? They talk about AI in terms of utopia. They say things like, AI is just going to do everything for you. You're just going to sit back. Oh, amazing. Life's going to be amazing. It's absolute fucking horse shit. Okay. Here's what I know about people. If you put them all in a room and tell them to do nothing, sit there and do nothing, absolutely nothing, what do?
Something.
They do something. They can't help themselves but do something. And so there's always going to be things that people want to do, even if you told them don't do anything. So let's say you do get to utopia and AI does everything. People are still going to find something to do. They just can't help themselves to do it. But and I don't think it's going to be the converse either. I don't think it's going to be a place where AI is totally unuseful and we'll do nothing and we'll just keep going the way we're going. I think it's going to be a bit of both. AI is going to be great for a few things and terrible for a few other use cases. And maybe in 50 years, that's completely different. I think that the hardest thing to tell right now is what does that actually look like? No one can tell you what that's going to look like. I can't tell you. I mean, I've built large language models from scratch, but it's sort of like building something and going, all right, have at it. Do the guy that built the hammer really know what every use case of that hammer was going to be?
Yeah, absolutely not. No.
Exactly. So I think it's just, I don't know, man. It's in the too hard bucket, but it's definitely not what the big boys of the big AI companies, because they have ulterior motives.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got raises to do, they've got IPOs to do, and they've got investors that are betting on them to increase their valuation.
A lot of the slop or a lot of the creation that AI generates, it's maybe fine for the moment, but often downstream, somebody else has to fix it.
Yeah.
And maybe it saves money or saves time up front, but ultimately it doesn't really. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it's so easy to use, isn't it? Like, everyone can get ChatGPT now. Like, CEOs that don't know anything are telling people to use Copilot to solve all their problems. Because something is so easy and so accessible, people can just use it with almost no ramifications. You can just upload stuff to Instagram that's like pure slop as well. And I have in my mind, in my normal life, I want as minimal bureaucracy as possible as a human being because it's annoying. No one likes doing admin. But with an AI, you want almost as much bureaucracy as physically possible to make sure that what it produces is actually good and is not going to cause more work, which is not the whole point of doing AI. AI should be to increase productivity. The easiest way is to make a list of things you don't want it to do. That's the easiest way to start. There are many different ways you might want to guardrail from specific behaviors like security or other things like that. But honestly, the biggest way that we do it initially is you take a list of rules of things that you absolutely don't want it to do, and you literally write in the prompt, you stress it, do not do these things. Like for me, I don't like LMs using M dashes anymore. I know you might have seen AI has tropes that it says and M dashes and bolding after a bullet point, which I've never seen in human text ever, but ChatGPT seems to do it.
Is it? And I think it's called an eyebrow title or something. It's a capital title above. Is
that what it's called?
I think that's what it's called. Whereas, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. It's I'd never seen that that often until ChatGPT came along, and I'd never seen M dashes almost in my life until
there's tells for AI writing and there are tells for AI coding. And another one for me is that the coloured borders of cards on the left, it's like a bright neon colour on the left of the card that goes around. That's that's AI. And you got an eyebrow title. This is an AI project.
Yeah. So I think just making sure you're very clear with what you don't want is far more important than what you actually want, because the language model doesn't know what you don't want, and it's forced to give you an answer, right? When every time you type in and hit enter, it gives you an answer. So yeah, be strict with it.
Your business sits on top of a handful of American labs like OpenAI and Google and Anthropic. If they pull a model or change it or change the terms, for example, there's nothing you can do, really. Aren't we just renting core capabilities from somebody else, really? Yeah,
you're absolutely right. But we do that with every layer of our technology stack in companies. Literally every layer. Even at our company, who does our email? Well, it's Microsoft. Microsoft are our company from America. Maybe I want to move from Outlook. I don't like Outlook very much, actually. Where am I going to move to? Google Workspace, which is also an American company. And then I want to store all my data as an enterprise. So let me take 3 examples of places you can store it. There's Microsoft Azure, there's Amazon Web Services, or there's Google Cloud, all of which are American companies. You know, I don't think we have much of a choice. You know, I would love to be in a position where I can say, look, the UK has a sovereign ability to make AI models and we can all use them. But for some reason, we do not possess the environment of which that's happened. We neither have, the willingness to do it here, or the energy to do it here, or even the space, to do it here. I'll give you a good example. Okay, I got told the other day it takes 6 months to do a VC raise in Europe, and it takes 2 weeks to do one in the US.
What is the difference?
It's just, the risk profile is just a different mentality in the US. They are willing to go all in on a few ideas, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. Mm-hmm. They have a different mindset about failure in the US.
Yeah, I've heard particularly Google love to just throw millions or even billions on an idea. Yeah. Try Google Podcast. What's the social media they had as well? Like Google One or something, wasn't it?
No, it was...
it had a very circle UI vibes.
It was like G... I can't remember.
Doesn't matter.
But nobody used it.
It's companies like, they'll put a few million or billions into a social media platform, and if they don't use it, that's fine, we'll move on to the next thing. Or Google Podcast, move over next thing, and they'll put it into this platform or this idea, and try, fail fast. That's quite a common business philosophy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Whereas the European one sometimes feels like fail never. Where you're like so afraid to fail once that you do everything possible to not fail ever. And when you don't fail ever, it means you go really slow.
You don't learn.
Yeah, and you don't learn, right? Because you're like, where's your feedback loop for failure? It's very, very difficult. And you don't let companies fail when they should fail. Like, I think some companies should fail. Like, they're just not very good. But they just hang on there like, a limpet up a whale's ass. They're just hanging on. Like, why do you exist? You shouldn't be there, right? Everyone goes like, oh, Wilco went out of business. It's like, when was the last time you went to Wilco?
Yeah.
Everyone goes, not that much. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, we live in completely different places. And what makes Europe amazing, are all the things that America lacks. And what makes America amazing is also what Europe lacks. We could do with having a way lower risk profile here in Europe and just trying some stuff. Let's just try stuff. And America could do with slowing down a little bit. Holy moly. Somewhere in the middle would be nice, eh? But, that being said, say whatever you want. All of our technology is run by American companies. Even our own English companies will quite often look to a large American company first before they even engage with a smaller UK firm. It's just a whole psychological thing that people do with technology. I don't know what the fix is for it. Even if you were to come up with a fix for it, it would take you 50 years to probably implement it. So,
one final question for you.
Yep.
For business owners who are watching this, what's one thing that you would like them to take away from this episode?
One thing. It's hard to pick one thing because there's so many things in my head. One thing would be, if you're going to do AI in your business, which is why you're probably listening to this, then pick something big and don't pick something small and easy.
Thank you very much, Jordan.
No
you have been an amazing guest.
I really appreciate it.
Great time, and thank you so much. Bam.
Done.